have special news for you.
The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer.
Are you going to send me or anybody that I know to a camp?
We have people that are stupid.
My immediate action was, yes, honored to take the job.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
It's the Ricochet Podcast with Peter Robinson. I'm James Lilacs. Today we talk to Kori Schake about North Korean negotiations and Michael Allman about winning California as an R. Let's have ourselves a podcast.
Bye-bye.
It's the Ricochet Podcast, everyone. Welcome. I'm James Lilacs with Peter Robinson, and if you're wondering what number it is, it's 393. How did it get that far? Well, thanks to the support of people like, well, the great courses. You can get unlimited access to over 9,000 lectures that you can watch or listen to whenever you want. But you got to go to thegreatcoursesplus.com/ricochet. And we're brought to you by Casper. Casper is the sleep brand that is making expertly designed products to help you get your best possible rest one night at a time. Get $50 toward select mattresses by visiting casper.com/ricochet and using the promo code Ricochet at the checkout. And we're brought to you by Away Travel. Your luggage, it should not cost more than your plane ticket, right? Well, Away Travel's luggage is designed with the highest quality materials, and it's still under $300. For $20 off a suitcase, visit awaytravel.com/ricochet20 and use the promo code Ricochet20 during your checkout. And now our endless, ceaseless parade of commercial endorsements begins anew in another direction with Peter Robinson here to tell you why Ricochet needs you. Peter, take it away.
Ricochet needs you because Ricochet is deserving. It is the most interesting and most civil and most provocative and most engrossing conservative site on the entire web. It has expenses. It needs to cover those expenses. It turns out to cost something to keep servers running and keep a website up. For $5 a month, you can join Ricochet, and that permits you not only to read all the material, but to participate, to put up posts of your own, to get to know other members. And if you like listening to the podcast, but say to yourself, I'm not sure I really want to participate in the website putting up posts, that's $2.50 a month. $2.50 a month to give yourself a clear conscience, to know that you are listening to the website. You clear conscience resonates with James, the Midwesterner. Clear conscience means something in the Midwest. So if you're a Midwesterner in particular, $2.50, and you can listen to the podcasts with a totally clear conscience. Ricochet.com. If you enjoy this podcast, we'd love to have you at the website. But if you're not ready for the website, $2.50 a month, and you can listen happily. James?
Well, exactly. And there are so many podcasts out there for free that ask nothing of you other than perhaps sitting through their commercials, which are the same as everybody else's. What's different about Ricochet, as you may note, is that there's this body, this organization, this community behind it where you can go and talk and yell at the podcasters and shake your fist or give them an attaboy or whatever, depending on your mood of the day. So there's a whole world out there. If you're just starting to get there now, I got an email from somebody last night. I don't want to mention his name unless he, of course, gives me written permission to do so. But it reminded me the back and forth that we had. What a community that Ricochet is, and you're going to need that in 2018 if the election goes south, and you're going to want that in 2018 if the election goes gloriously in the right direction. Whether or not you believe that 2018 is going to be the most important election of your lifetime or not, there's this thing called the outside world out there with its own concerns and its own agendas, like, for example, North Korea. Let's talk about that and what challenges the president's face with Kori Schake. She's the Deputy Director General of the International Institute of Strategic Studies. She was previously a research fellow at Stanford at the Hoover Institution, and she blogs regularly for Shadow Government on Foreign Policy, and she's on the editorial board of Orbis and the board of Center for European Reform. Welcome, Kori.
Hello, my friend.
Kori, I'm sorry, go ahead, James. It's Peter Robinson here. I just want to say hello so you know who you're on with. Peter's here and James. James, go.
Kori, yesterday the president said about South Korea that maybe their military isn't pulling their weight and we're spending a lot of money on it and perhaps it's a situation we're losing. It seemed to be that before we even begin to negotiate with North Korea, the concessions are being made that perhaps don't need to be. What are your expectations for this North Korean summit, if indeed it even happens?
So first, let me say you are exactly right. The president seems incapable of giving messages that support his positions and suggesting that the South Korean burden-sharing arrangement is detrimental to American security is the worst possible thing he could say in advance of negotiations with North Korea. So, yes, you are exactly right, James. The expectations for the summit with the North Koreans, most of my fellow chattering class are derisive that the president's doing this, think it's going to be a disaster. And I have to say, I'm a lot less worried about it than people who think, oh my God, unless we have 12 Sherpa meetings and the Foreign Service gets its say, the president can't possibly make a good decision. Because first of all, I think that's elite snobbery. But second of all, none of us actually know very much about North Korea. And so that the president took a big strategic initiative to try and break a deadlock on a very dangerous problem strikes me as actually good leadership on his part. As you guys know, I'm not prepared to defend him on a lot of stuff, but I am prepared to defend the president on this one.
Kori,
and
Peter here, could I go back and I'd like to spend a moment or two just going over the basics, really, frankly, the military basics. We're talking so much about diplomacy that I think let's just put it this way. I'd like to have a refresher course on what's at stake here. So North Korea,
sure.
What could they do to us? What could they do to the Japanese? And what could they do to South Korea? Just very briefly, how much power do they have to hurt people?
Quite a lot. I want to take it in the reverse order that you asked it, Peter. So first, what could they do to South Korea? The majority of the South Korean population lives in the capital of South Korea, Seoul, which unfortunately lies in artillery range of the demilitarized zone that marks the border between North and South Korea. And the North Korean military has somewhere between 10 and 12,000 heavily fortified and hidden artillery tubes aimed at South Korea. That has been the main military threat in this problem, and it continues to be the main military threat in this problem.
So they hold hostage. They effectively have a gun to the heads of 20 million people, roughly.
Yes. 20 million people, including 134,000 Americans, about 34,000 of whom are, 150,000 Americans, 34,000 of whom are American military folks stationed in Korea. The other 125,000 are business people, people married to Korea, all the usual reasons somebody lives overseas. So yeah, that is the principal risk, and it is unchanged by the fact that for about the last 20 years, the North Korean government has been putting a disproportionate amount of its effort and its resources to develop long-range intercontinental ballistic missiles. So, that's redundant too. Intercontinental is by definition long range.
Right.
And also to develop nuclear weapons to put on those missiles. They have clearly developed the nuclear weapons. They have clearly developed the missiles. The question is whether they have been able to mate the missiles. Sorry, there was a motorcycle going by. Whether they have actually been able to mate the warheads to the intercontinental ballistic missiles. They have not yet proven the ability to do that. It doesn't mean they don't have the ability to do that. And they've been making fast, good progress. So they started lobbing missiles over the Sea of Japan 12 years ago.
Right.
And now they claim to have the ability to hit the United States with nuclear weapons. And if they do not already have that ability, they're very close to it.
And very close means single-digit number of months, single-digit number of years. What does very close mean?
It certainly means single-digit number of years.
Got it.
I think when Mike Pompeo was the director of Central Intelligence, I believe he thought it was a 6-month time frame.
All right. And then the next, again, I'm just asking for the basics here.
Mm-hmm.
So if we were considering any kind of military action against North Korea, is there any way, if we're going to continue the metaphor of they're holding hostage, having a gun to the heads of these 20 million people, is there any kind of is there anything we can hope to do to prevent them from striking South Korea? If we do whatever kind of attack we do, they hold it in their power to lob thousands of artillery pieces in the direction of Seoul. There's no way we can stop that.
Well, wait a minute. Hold on about that, Kori.
Go ahead.
I mean, the gun to the head metaphor is one thing, but you have to imagine that there's somebody else watching the situation with deadly aim who can possibly shoot that gun out of the person's hand before the trigger is pulled. It's naive and optimistic to think that the North Koreans would never be able to get a shot off if we struck first. But first of all, how old is that stuff they got buried? B, we have to know where the majority of it is. And C, it's not as if we are without our own abilities. South Korea, 2013, 2014, ordered a whole bunch of bunker buster missiles, 170, 200. They just ordered a bunch more as well. We've got massively, ground penetrating ordnance. Is it possible that gun to the head threat is overstated?
It's possible, but I do not personally believe it is overstated. What it looks to me as though, in the best of all possible worlds, an American military operation of extraordinary virtuosity in which we were able to accurately identify and target all of their nuclear weapons infrastructure and the mobile missiles that they have that can range Japan and South Korea. And if we could destroy all of that, prevent North Korean special forces from conducting effective assassination campaigns of South Korean political leaders, and in the space of, say, 3 hours, take out all of those artillery tubes, you're still probably talking a couple of 100,000 dead South Koreans. And
that's if everything goes perfectly. Okay.
Yeah,
wow.
That's in the best of all. I mean, it'd be a beautiful world if we had the cyber ability to cut the leadership off, and we had the. But I think that is an extremely risky basis on which to make policy, because it is likelier not true than true.
Then what's Trump's strategic? What does he have to bring to the table then? If they know that we can't do that, we won't do that because of the casualties. They've got us. They've got us over a barrel.
It's not clear to me that so there are lots of things the North Koreans could want that might cause them to make that trade-off. One possibility would be that that what they're looking for is stature, and what they're looking for is political legitimation, being treated as a serious power. A peace treaty, which, as you guys know, the Korean War did not conclude with a peace treaty, only with an armistice. Maybe there are things we can offer them, asymmetric things that would cause them to give it up. But whether or not the North Koreans give up their nuclear weapons, negotiations are worth having for a couple of reasons. First, we don't know very much about North Korea, its leadership, or what's going on inside the country, and negotiations are a pretty good way to figure it out. Second, our key advantage is keeping the Japanese and South Koreans and Australians and others aligned with us as tensions rise. The Trump administration's done a terrific job of doing that, but ultimately we can't have a policy more alarming or more draconian than the South Koreans will support, and negotiations are going to be crucial in keeping them on board. And the third thing is, we may very likely have to actually go to war on the Korean Peninsula, and if we do, we're going to need to have a public conversation among Americans about whether and why and the risks to our own country. And negotiations are essential to persuading my mother that we need to proceed with whatever needs doing.
Kori, Peter here again. I guess I have another couple of questions. If we stick with the hostage metaphor, I don't know. My reading, not to open a separate and now historical controversy, but my reading of Waco is that the reason Waco went wrong was that the FBI went in. If you've got a hostage situation, you starve them out, right? And so if military, why is it? So as best I can tell, putting sanctions on the North Koreans represents, roughly speaking, the effort to starve them out, to force them.
Yes, that's exactly the right metaphor.
All right. Now, why don't the Chinese help out? Why is it impossible for the Chinese to respond to the following, which as far as I can tell, you'd know better than I, which as far as I can tell is something that has been said to them, although not as crudely as I'm about to put it. Look, Chinese, this is untenable. Stick your own guy in. Take these lunatics out. Stick your own guy in. Make him entirely loyal to Beijing. We can live with that. If we can live with a divided North Korea, and we have for half a century, we can certainly live with a guy loyal to Beijing, and at least he won't be starving his own people. You'll look good in the eyes of the world. A serious problem will have been averted. Just fix the problem. Why haven't the Chinese done that?
Because you have not been the negotiator on this, Peter Robinson.
True enough. True enough.
So your country needs you. Get along. And second thing is, you dramatically overestimate how much the Chinese want to solve this problem, right? They're actually fine with American attention being distracted by the North Korean problem. They're actually fine with our attention being focused on a problem that's likely to split us from our allies if it comes to the use of force. They're very there's a lot they like about this problem. And so you shouldn't overestimate how much they are willing to help us. The only thing that appears to have gotten China's attention on this at all has been the concern that we are going to flow military forces to the neighborhood of the Korean Peninsula permanently, and that will make it harder for the Chinese to do what they want to do in terms of intimidating countries on their periphery.
All right. So, I'm sorry. Go ahead, James.
Well, and of course, China doesn't want a flow of refugees. They would prefer that everybody stay in North Korea and starve. I mean, when Peter asked before about starving them out and using the hostage metaphor, we can put sanctions and sanctions and sanctions on them, and it really won't matter, will it? Because there's a class of people who are just at the bottom of society and are written off as destined to die whenever there's a shortage. It's the leadership, the top tier that you have to target. And here's my question. Is it possible to make life so uncomfortable for that top tier that they say it is time to just jettison the whole Kim fiction dynasty and put in our own form of military zhoosh?
That's certainly possible, but it seems to me that likely overstates Chinese influence. So, fellas, I am so sorry.
I got things going on in the background.
There's either a news crew or the movers have come, or...
I have been shuttling to Hugh Hewitt's TV show.
You're in Washington. I thought you were in London.
I am actually in London, but doing it from their studio here. So
all right.
That's what's going on in the background.
So would you please, now if you have to leave, you have to leave. But could you open by telling Hugh what's going to happen? Because James and I won't be able to sleep tonight until you tell somebody today what's going to happen in Korea. Kori, thank you.
Thank you, Kori.
Thank you, my friends. I really appreciate you giving me the privilege of being on the program again.
We'll talk again. That's hilarious. Well, I hope she gives Hugh our fondest regards. Hugh's coming to town soon, and if he doesn't give me a call and come over here with his usual compliments of scotches and whiskeys, I'm going to be appalled. I'll have some things to tell him. I'll have some learning to dump on him. And by the way, if you are in the mood for things, extra knowledge that you would like to just deploy at will in a party, like our guest just did there. For heaven's sake, she was talking about the history and the strategy while she was presumably in transit in a subway on a cab heading to the studio. Well, the studio can be taken with you. The library can fit in your pocket wherever you go with the great courses. Now, you love enjoying and discovering new and interesting insights about the world around you. Well, the Great Courses Plus, it's a fun and easy way to do that. You can learn from some of the brightest minds, the top professors and experts, about, well, virtually anything that interests you. World history, brush up on it while driving. The universe, explore it from your living room. Learn how to take better photos while you're on a walk. Yeah, it's that diverse. Unlimited access to over 9,000 lectures that you can watch or listen to whenever you want. For example, the history of Eastern Europe. It gives you context about recent elections that'll help. It's called the first lecture, From Democrats to Dictators. We kind of like it in the other direction, but, that's not how it always works. In this lecture, you will learn about border wars, the fight for self-determination that continued in the East after the guns fell silent along the Western Front after World War I. You'll learn about the little-known Soviet-Polish War, the forcible population exchanges throughout the region, the rise of dictators. There's so much to discover in this series to give you context for what's happening now. The Great Courses Plus provides that. And as one of our listeners, you get a free trial to watch or listen to any of these fantastic lectures. But you need to go to our special URL. Start exploring today, and you can possibly even find a lecture that tells you what URL stands for. I'll bet Peter doesn't know. We'll quiz him in a second. Sign up for your free trial at thegreatcoursesplus.com/ricochet. That's thegreatcoursesplus.com/ricochet. And Peter, I know you're a technical kind of guy. URL, what does it stand for?
I think the U is universal and the L is language locator. No, I don't know.
We'll leave this for the comments, and people can Google it if they want to.
Okay.
But, why not? Let's leave it for that. All right. And now we bring to the podcast Michael Allman, a longtime San Diego County resident who's an experienced businessman with a distinguished career. Mike worked for the San Diego company Sempra Energy for 14 years and rose to become the CEO of the Southern California Gas Company. And while at Sempra, Mike launched a new industry to bring large-scale solar power to California, building one of the largest renewable energy businesses in the country. He's now running to represent California's 52nd district in Congress. And we have to ask, Mike, you're running against a Democrat, Scott Peters. When was the last time that an R won in the 52nd?
4 elections ago. Scott Peters has won the last 3. It's an evenly distributed district. About 1/3 of the voters are registered as Democrats, 1/3 as Republicans, and 1/3 are no party. But Mr. Peters won the middle no party the last 3 elections.
It's Peter Robinson here. I'm looking at a map of the district, and you've only got 1/3 Republicans. Jeepers creepers. It looks like a pretty rich chunk of San Diego country. You've got Coronado, La Jolla, and jeepers. That's you've got Mitt Romney's California home, I think, in your district.
Well,
and then what happens? Go ahead.
I was going to say there's maybe a bit of an analogy to the national. When you look at the national map, it looks an awful lot red. Of course, the issue is that the density isn't the same everywhere, right? The coastal tends to be much more Democratic. Downtown in La Jolla, as you get further out to Rancho Bernardo, Poway, and, of course, Coronado is traditionally Republican strongholds, and much less density out there.
And then one last question just about the geography of your district. Again, I'm looking at a map. So you run from the coast, from Coronado and La Jolla, inland north of San Diego. And I have to say, I don't know much about that country. Does that turn into ranching country? Is that rural? Is it agricultural? What's that country like? That's where it's mostly red, I'm assuming.
It is mostly red. It's interesting that you can plot a correlation that's a pretty good correlation. Distance from the ocean determines how Republican you're going to be. If you're right on the coast, it tends to be Democrat. The further inland, yes, there are some rural parts. You can think of horses and ranches and farms and things like that, but not mostly. It's certainly a majority of the people. I'd call it suburban housing development. Suburban is much more of the people than sort of rural. To get to the ranches and the farmers, you need to go a little further east.
Okay. And now, Michael, here's what's been happening. There's been an off-year election in Virginia in which the Republicans got wiped out. And there's been some off-year elections in Georgia to the state legislature in which Republicans did historically badly. And then we just saw a 10-point swing in a district in eastern Maryland that Donald Trump carried by 20 points. So it went 60-40 to 50-50, and the Democrat eked out a victory in a district that the Republicans should have won by 20 points. And now Michael is popping up and saying, over here, folks, I want to run as a Republican in California. Michael, persuade us that you're not a lunatic. What are you doing? What are you doing? Go ahead.
It's very easy for me to persuade you because of my platform. So what we have in Washington and what you're seeing now and what you just described is the result of hyper-partisan politics, where it's us versus them, and it seems that many of these elections are referendums on President Trump. You either like him or you don't. People have lost faith in Washington, D.C. Many people have lost faith that it's just hyper-partisan, nothing gets done, and they're tired of it. They want people who represent who they are. Take a look at our district. Again, it's 1/3 Republican, 1/3 Democrat, 1/3 no party. Yet the sitting Democrat votes with the Democrat 92+% of the time. So here's my platform. If you elect me to Congress, I will vote the way the people want me to vote. I've developed a computer system where I pose questions. It's safe, secure, confidential, and I'll ask policy questions. And if enough people from San Diego in my district say, Mike, here's what we think about this issue, that's the way I'm going to vote. It doesn't matter what the party thinks. It doesn't matter what special interest thinks. I'm going to vote with the people. That message is why I will win a majority of the independents who are tired of picking one column all D or one column all R. Very few people buy into the party platforms completely. They want to be able to go issue by issue. That's what I'm going to give them.
Michael James Lilacs here in Minneapolis. And it sounds great. I mean, we want responsive government, but let's say that the people have spoken to you in the issue of, pronoun choice, that what the people want is they want the people of California, the businesses of California, to mandate transgender appreciation sessions so that to stamp out transphobia, and also to mandate criminal penalties for misgendering somebody and using the wrong adjective. So here we have forcing companies to do something on a social issue and forcing people to speak and use certain terms. That may be what people want, or the loudest people want, but is it right? Is it good? And is it a correct application of the power of government?
So what my platform does is it changes the role of the congressman. So I now become an advocate. So I look at something like that and say, that's not the right thing to do. And my job is to convince the people of San Diego that that's the right thing to do. And I tell them that that's the way I'm going to vote unless you veto me. So it would take a substantial participation of people to say, Mike, you're wrong on this issue. So don't underestimate the value of the bully pulpit that I'll have. But I'm going to give the people a veto. Now, let's suppose I do get, in your example, very good participation. A lot of people weigh in, 20, 30, 40% of the voters, and say, we hear you, Mike, but we want to go the other way. Then I failed, and at the end of the day, they win. The alternative to majority rule is minority rule, and people are tired of minority rule. It's where special interests don't have the people in mind, and they tell the congressman how to vote, and they do that. So it's time for a change. Give the people a voice. We can try to find these edge issues and think about how things might unfold in certain questions like that. But really what's important is for the first time, a voter is going to be able to be fiscally conservative and socially moderate. That's where my constituents are. They don't have that choice today.
Well, one of the things that defines being a social moderate today, oddly enough, is where you stand on energy policy, because it's a moral issue to many people. And you got a great position here in that you were the head of the gas company, and you also had a lot of dealings with renewables, with solar. So one of the issues that a minority of people care about, really, is renewable energy, because most people want their energy cheap and they want it dependable. And if somebody puts up a wind turbine, great. If somebody's got geothermal, fantastic. But what they want is dependable, cheap power. So let's say then that you've got to make the case that more fracking, more pipeline construction is necessary. And the people of California are saying, no, we want more renewable. Is it possible, really, today to run as a Republican without really saying renewable is the future and that's where the majority of our resources can go? Or can you be honest with people about what the infrastructure needs?
Oh, absolutely. And a big portion of this, so picture my webpage again, where I'll propose a question about environmental, and let's say, are you in favor of fracking or not? I'm going to have arguments on both sides, but there's going to be Mike's view here. When you click on the button that says Mike's view, I'm going to tell you with my expertise, after having studied it and read everything I can, I'll tell you why I think it's not a good idea to ban fracking. The fracking revolution has created untold wealth in our country. We use about 25 trillion cubic feet of gas a year. We're saving $100 billion due to the fracking revolution. Now, do we want to do it right? Yes. So let's have common sense regulation, not a complete ban like New York has done. That's just insanity. They're destroying the economy of their own people there. Go right across the border to Pennsylvania, where they do allow fracking, and gas is flowing. People have jobs. They're getting. So I will educate my constituents on that, and it's up to me to say, look, let's have common sense regulation. Yes, let's protect the water tables. Yes, let's make sure that developers and the drillers do the right thing. But an outright ban on fracking is the wrong thing to do.
Michael, Peter Robinson.
I think I can convince many.
Peter Robinson here once again. It's Michael Allman who's running for Congress for the 52nd Congressional District of California, which is the coast just to the west of San Diego proper and goes inland to the north of San Diego proper. Michael, explain to us, if you would, the nuts and bolts of what happens. I'm a Californian, I guess, after having lived here for a good long time. And I have to say, our electoral system as it now stands even confuses me. You've got to tell us the steps that you've got to go through to get to the general election.
Okay. About 10 years ago, California restructured the way that many of the elections happen and essentially took the primary away from being a partisan primary, where the parties choose their representatives, to what's called the jungle primary, colloquially, or it's an open primary. So on June 5th, anyone who qualifies for the ballot for, let's say, my race in the California 52nd Congressional District, that will be there. And the top two vote getters, independent of party, will go to the general election in November. So right now the ballot is set. It was set last Friday when all the paperwork had to be in. The sitting congressman is a Democrat from La Jolla. He will be the only Democrat on the ballot. There'll be 6 Republicans and 1 independent. So the voters will choose one person, one vote. Whoever gets first and second will go to November.
Wow. Now, are you running as a Republican or are you the independent, Michael?
So I'm running as a Republican. There is one independent, but one of the things I've learned is in order to change the system with the platform that I just described to you, it's got to be done from within. It's clearly an independent message that I have, but I learned very early that independents aren't going to win. I'm not in this for fun. I'm in it to win it. So I'm running as a Republican.
Okay. By the way, I'm totally persuaded that you're in it to win it because people who are in it for fun haven't given as much thought to it and don't sound as determined as you do. All right. Next question. So how do you, running as a Republican, you've got 5 Republican opponents and an independent opponent. The sitting congressman is for sure going to be one of the top 2 finishers because all the Democrats will vote for him. That means he gets a third of the vote right out of the gate, which is all he's going to need if there are 6 others of you splitting up the other 2/3. How do you handle that problem? How do you make sure you finish? You're one of the top 2 finishers, correct?
He will get first. Yes, he'll get 50% or so. So it's 2 things. It's outreach and message conversion ratio. So think about, votes. People need to know who you are unless they just pick randomly. And then they need to like your message. I'm the number 1 name recognition among the rest of the Republicans by more than 2 to 1. That also gets reflected in financing. So I've had a much better fundraising season than they have. This is all public information, but I've got $250,000 in the bank. No one else has $50,000 in the bank. So I will outreach them. And then here's the killer. I will convert 85% of the people that I talk to. I've been moving around the county and the city for several months now, and the response I get when I describe what I just described to you is things like, isn't that the way it's supposed to work? I thought it was working that way. Why hasn't somebody done this before? I want my voice listened to. When I call my congressman, I can't even get through. This is great. I'll vote for you. I'll support you. 85 or 90%. Now, to be fair, when I don't convince people, it tends to be on the ends of both spectrums. So even, frankly, the hardcore Republicans, for example, say, wait a minute, Mr. Allman, are you telling me, you're going to vote with them, they're Dems some of the time? I said, well, listen, if the people speak loudly and enough of them, and it's clear, then yes, I will, because they elect me.
Because that's the deal you're setting up. You're making.
No, I want the whole platform, and they run away. So
got it. Michael, a last question from me. I think James may have one last one as well. Just give us 1 or 2 sentences tops, because you've got to go campaign. What would you hope to accomplish in the final 2 years of Donald Trump's first, perhaps only, term?
What I would hope to accomplish if I'm elected to Congress is to break the hyper-partisanship. It's us versus them on everything. One more sentence. In the tax bill, there are 12 states in the country where there's one Republican and one Democrat. All the Republicans voted yes. All the Democrats voted no, even though they have the same constituents in the state senators. That's the problem. The Democrats voted no because they're Democrats. We need to look at issue by issue, not along partisan line. I want to break that mold.
Well, and great. Partisan lines can be stultifying as they are clarifying. The question is, from an outsider's perspective, California looks like a political monoculture, that even the people who call themselves Republicans are pretty much so besotted by or accepting of the ideas of the left that Arnold Schwarzenegger ends up being the most conservative politician who can possibly win. It seems as though when it comes to affordable housing, quote, renewable energy, sanctuary cities, all of these things, that there's nobody there to advance a different idea that breaks the mold of the leftist ideology. How is it possible then for any Republican really to change the culture of California? Isn't it easier simply just to go along with the political culture of California, eke out a few little wins here, and then just essentially, resign yourself to a state that's fundamentally different from what it was founded to be and what the rest of the country is?
Yeah. Right now, California is fundamentally different, and in some ways very positive. In some ways,
how?
Not
what are those?
Positive.
What are those positive ways?
Are not. So some of the positive ways are we have a beautiful state and the air quality has improved dramatically. One of the negatives is that we can't get our budget, much like the federal government, sorted out, and the state is spending too much money. Both of those issues can be attacked from people who generally are on the left side of the spectrum and on the right side of the spectrum. There isn't anything unnatural, in my view, of someone who cares about clean air. At the same time, they wish the government wasn't so big. There's a lot of people out there like it. Today, they don't have this place to land. They choose the Democrats, which not only gets you, perhaps, if you will, the clean air, but also all the social programs that spend us into big deficits and big debt. Or if they go with the Republican, maybe they can be more fiscally sane, but they might not care as much about the environment. And a lot of people who feel that way don't know what choice to do. Now they can elect someone in me who will say, it's not, I don't have a problem being green and fiscally conservative. They have no place to land today. Now they will.
What does it mean, though, to be green and fiscally conservative if it requires the power of the state to take money away from people to make things I mean, if somebody has to use public transportation or their own car to live way outside of San Francisco because they can't afford to live inside of San Francisco, either people will say then what we need is laws that make it easier and cheaper to live in San Francisco, or we need to take more money away from Google millionaires and give it to people so we don't have the homeless problem, which ruins the air quality because they have feces on the street, et cetera. In other words, the argument...
There's some common things you can do. There's some common, like, for example, one of my pet peeves is I don't know if you've heard about the California bullet train. It's a disaster.
Yeah. Oh, good, Michael. Good. I was kidding.
It's going from... Look, it starts off at $15 billion. Now they think it's then to 30 to 50. The latest estimate I heard is $70 billion. Let's not waste money on a boondoggle like that when you can fly from Los Angeles to San Francisco on Southwest. There's 15 flights a day for as low as $49. That is a complete waste of money. So we can be fiscally conservative and say, stop the madness. They've already spent several billions with no track laid, and they're never going to get the permitting to get it done. Let's just realize it's a mistake. Let's do a deal. How about half of that savings back to the people and half to something that's more practical to push the environment forward? Encouraging research into new solar panels or lots of things we could do other than waste it on this public transportation boondoggle.
Amen. Folks, watch the 52nd in California. Michael Allman, thank you for being on the podcast today.
Michael,
thank you very much for your time.
Michael, before you leave, what's your website?
Allman for Congress, ALLMAN for Congress.com.
Thank you, Michael. Good luck.
Thank you.
The problem with coming out against the bullet train and saying that it's cheaper to fly, which it is, is that there's always going to be somebody greener/holier than thou who will be able to point to you as a despoiler of the environment, a dumper of massive carbon, because we all know that bullet trains run on some magical sort of, winged unicorn flatulence that doesn't pollute the environment at all. And they live for trains.
James. Oh, even I, who have sort of gotten used to your verbal, the way you can just toss off sparklers. What was it? Winged unicorn?
I don't know.
I may have trouble recovering. Hold on,
it's not a particular. Yeah, it's not an original locution to bring unicorns into it or their flatulence. But
all right.
For the progressive set, the train is a sign of enlightenment, and we should all be very much like Europe, where everyone takes the trains and everyone bikes to work and the rest of it. And when we show them the size of their countries and the size of their continent and the size of the distance that people have to go, that's what they want. They want us all to pack into those areas. In Minnesota right now, Minneapolis, my beloved town, we're having an argument about zoning. They want to make it possible to put fourplexes anywhere. Right now,
wait a minute. What's a fourplex?
An apartment building with 4 units in it. Right now,
I see. Okay,
residential neighborhoods is a certain part of the city which is regarded as single family home only. There are laws that say you can't put down a fourplex anywhere, but that's what they want to do. They want to take, so a developer can go to the middle of the block and raise a house, and where once there was one house, all of a sudden there's going to be a place for 4 people that just sort of magically opens up into more housing, like the box of a Casper mattress when you open it. Because when you open a Casper, out it comes, and there's huge mattress that was packed into this box, and you have no idea how they did that. Let me tell you about Casper. Whether or not you've got a house of your own or you have an apartment in a fourplex, sleep is important. And you need an expertly designed product to help you get your best sleep one night at a time. Now, the experts at Casper have worked tirelessly to make a quality sleep surface that cradles your natural geometry in all the right places. I mean, you spend a third of your life sleeping, so you ought to be comfortable, right? Well, the original Casper combines multiple supportive memory foams for a quality sleep surface with, altogether now, that's right, the right amount of both sink and bounce. And it's a breathable design that helps you sleep cool and regulates your body temperature throughout the night. Casper, not content to rest on their laurels, it's got 2 other mattresses for you now, the Wave and the Essential. The Wave features a patent-pending premium support system to mirror the natural shape of your body. The Essential has a streamlined design at a price that will not keep you up at night. All of these products are designed, developed, and assembled in the U.S. by Casper. Prices are affordable because Casper cuts out the middleman and sells directly to you. And every Casper mattress is delivered right to your door in an amazing box that will make you think that there has to be some magical alien technology behind this kind of compression. Free shipping, hassle-free returns in the U.S. and Canada. And you can be sure of your purchase with Casper's 100-night risk-free sleep-on-it trial. As somebody who's been sleeping for more than 100 nights, 300, 600 nights, I don't know. All I know is that I wake without a pain, and I wake rested, and I love my Casper. As a matter of fact, sometimes I want to get out of bed earlier so I can take a nap in the afternoon and enjoy my Casper even more. Special offer for you so you can join this experience. $50 off select mattresses by visiting Casper.com/Ricochet and use that promo code Ricochet at the checkout, won't you? That's Casper.com/Ricochet. Promo code Ricochet for $50 off select mattresses. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks to our friends at Casper for sponsoring the Ricochet podcast. Well, Peter, what else is new in the world that has piqued your interest this week that we may palaver about before we head out?
What has piqued my interest this week? I did a shoot of Uncommon Knowledge the day before yesterday with Thomas Sowell.
Whoa.
And here's one of the questions I asked. I read a list of 5 titles, 5 books. And I said, Tom, do you know what that list is? 5 books by Tom Sowell. And he said, no, I don't. And I replied, Tom, that is a list of the books you have published since turning 80. Tom Sowell is now 87, and he's just out with a brand new book called Discrimination and Disparities. Mm-hmm. It's brilliant. He's brilliant. And this is, to me, something of a puzzle. I said to Tom, you haven't had anything to prove to anybody for at least 3 decades. And yet here he is, 87 years old, seated across the table from me, appearing in part to promote a brand new book. Why do you keep working so hard? And do you know, I asked that question some years ago to Milton Friedman as well. And Tom Sowell and Milton Friedman both had the same response. They couldn't even understand why anybody would ask. Mm-hmm. Hard work represented such a part of their makeup. Milton thought about it for a while and said, well, I was just raised that way. And Tom, the question didn't really compute. I mean, he just couldn't understand why anybody would ask. And then he said, well, you know, I have given up my column. He used to write a column twice a week. But I still like reading books and writing books when I can get facts to write about, when I can get the facts, when I can do the research. So that has been much on my mind. There I sat 48 hours ago from a man who's been extremely hardworking all his life and who could have just knocked off to garden and play golf. And actually, Tom Sowell's great love is photography a decade and a half ago, and everybody would have said he'd earned it. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, I have children whom I sometimes teenaged and in their early 20s children whom I sometimes – it's the question of motivation, James. Mm-hmm. What has struck me this past week is the perplexing question of human motivation. I don't have any answers, but that's what struck me. You asked, I answered. That is what struck me. Why do you work so hard, for goodness sake? You don't have to write as much as you do.
I was talking to a colleague who's retiring, who's leaving the paper, and I was saying, so what now? Are you going to write the stuff you really wanted to write that you couldn't get in the paper? Perhaps a novel, nonfiction, what? And the colleague said, no writing. That's it. I'm done. And I couldn't understand. I can't understand that.
Just didn't even compute. Right.
It makes no sense to me. Why would you not want to continue to write as much as possible? Because, I mean, I enjoy writing for the paper, I enjoy writing for my website, and I enjoy when I get those things out of the way when I can turn to something else and write the other thing that I wanted to do that I don't have time for. I mean, I'm working on a novel now, and at the end of the night, I go downstairs and try to get 700 to 900 words out every night before I sit down and watch television, because I love to do it, and I have to. It justifies my tenure this side of the dirt. And the idea of not doing that, sort of my meaning for taking up resources, my excuses all evaporate.
So wait a minute. Let me understand that. I've been fortunate enough to visit your beautiful home. You have an office upstairs and a separate office downstairs for writing. That's interesting.
So I write upstairs, and then after everybody's gone to sleep, I go down to the kitchen and I stand at the kitchen table, the island, and work and wander around and sort of have my own little space, watch some television. That's right. I mean, I have many places where I write. I write at the office. I write downstairs. I write up here. Upstairs here at my main control center with all of my monitors is mostly website work, which is visual and editing and design and the rest of it. Most of my writing gets done in very concentrated bursts, standing at the kitchen table, clattering away. So let's say, for example, I had a column due for National Review, and the lead time for those is long. I mean,
it is? Okay.
Well, it's not like it's a magazine, so it's not like so you're reduced to sort of being oracular and general. You can't write about things that happen right now. That's what Ricochet is for. And Ricochet, for example, has been talking about, this Pennsylvania election, which did not go the way the R's wanted it to go. Right. What do you think about that? What can you draw from that?
Well, I'll tell you what I thought the day before the Pennsylvania election. It seemed to me that the probability distribution, to put it in the most pompous possible way, was barbell shaped. I figured that if the tax cut took effect and the investments started to be made, the economy continued to pick up, we were over 3% growth. By November, one likely outcome was the Republicans would do pretty well, but that the other likely outcome was a catastrophe. I just didn't see much middle ground. And now it seems to me, as you heard me make this case to Michael Allman just a moment ago, we have a pretty good record now of what's happening. In Virginia, Ed Gillespie, who came very close 2 years ago to winning a Senate seat, ran for governor this time around. Ed Gillespie, a Republican and a very good guy, and he got wiped out. He lost by 8 points. In Georgia special elections, or off-year elections, I should say, the Republicans did much more poorly than they ought to have done. And we just saw a 10-point swing in a western Pennsylvania district. It just looks to me as though now you have to say, as an analytical matter, it pains me to say this, I don't want this outcome, But I think you just have to say as an analytical matter that the likelihood that Republicans will lose the House, that is now by far the most likely outcome in November. When Donald Trump is the issue, Republicans lose, and Donald Trump is going to be the issue in November. And the next thing that will happen is the impeachment hearings in the House of Representatives. It looks to me as though it's too early to say for sure, of course, but that's now the likeliest outcome. It is likely that we're in for a rough ride. That's what I think. What about you?
No, I agree. The impeachment will be just jolly fun. Can't wait for that. That's going to be
horrible.
Wonderful. It's going to be wonderful for the country. At that point, I expect a lot of celebrities to say, "Oh, I'm so ashamed of my country. I'm going to have to move to Australia," Matt Damon style. Probably not. But hey, I want to tell you this before we get to our last question for Peter, that if you do plan on leaving the country for any reason because you've decided that the political makeup is not your liking, Matt Damon style, you fear for your life, take a good suitcase, okay? And take it from me. Take an away travel suitcase with you. High quality materials, much lower price compared to other brands. Middleman, he's cut out. They sell directly to you. Let me tell you about this suitcase. Variety of colors, 5 sizes. The carry-on, the bigger carry-on, the medium, the large for extended stays, or the kids carry-on, which is small. All of these suitcases are made with premium German polycarbonate, unrivaled in strength, unrivaled in impact resistance, and they're very lightweight, by the way. The interior has this patent-pending compression system. If you're an overpacker, it's very easy to get things in there. 4 360-degree spinners, which guarantee a smooth ride around the airport. TSA-approved combination lock. It's built right in so you can prevent the theft, which is nice. Choose your password. Don't make it 1111, please. Removable, washable laundry bag inside keeps your dirty clothes separate from the clean. Now, sounds like every other suitcase you've ever had. Well, yes and no. I mean, the construction is fantastic. The durability, the little well, here's the thing that really sets it apart. Both sizes of the carry-on are able to charge your cell phones, your tablets, your e-readers, anything else that's got a USB cord powering it. A single charge of the Away carry-on will charge your phone 5 times. No more dragging yourself around the airport trying to find an empty outlet that has been occupied by some guy camping there for 5 hours. Believe me, in the smaller airports especially, this can be a lifesaver. Oh, and by the way, lifetime warranty. Anything breaks, they'll fix it, replace it for life. 100-day trial. Live with it, vibe with it, travel with it. Instagram the heck out of that sucker. If at any point you decide it's not for you, return for a free refund, no questions asked. Free shipping on all Away orders within the lower 48. And let me tell you, as somebody who can't wait to go places, love to go to my beautiful airport, which is the best in the country, according to most surveys. I just love taking my Away. So $20 off. Visit awaytravel.com/ricochet20. Use the promo code ricochet20 during the checkout. And again, awaytravel.com, ricochet20. Promo code ricochet20 at checkout for $20 off any suitcase. And our thanks to Away Travel for sponsoring this, the Ricochet Podcast. Well, Peter, we've seen a lot of people coming and going. Tillerson's out, boo-hoo, and Larry Kudlow is in.
Larry is in, our own Larry.
Arthur Brooks is out. In the world of think tankery, what does the loss of Arthur Brooks mean?
Impossible to say until we get some inkling who's going to replace him. But Arthur was, let's put it this way. Arthur turned the think tank model upside down in the following sense. Heritage, the Hoover Institution, it's been the case that directors tend to stay just one step off stage. They are kind of stage managers. That's the way the model has worked most of the time. Arthur was one of AEI's main stars, and a great star he was. So we'll miss him. And it's a good question. I don't know what the AEI board intends to do, but whether they intend to look for another Arthur or to go back to the older model where the director or the top guy is, in effect, manages the place, runs the place. I just don't know. But let's put it this way. Whatever AEI chooses to do next, I'm interested in what Arthur's going to do next. I don't want him to go back to music and disappear from public policy. He's a wonderful voice. I hope he keeps writing and stays with us.
Well, they're all wonderful voices, and people are saying that Paul Ryan might take it after he gets bounced out. But here's the question. For all these wonderful voices, who's listening? Do people want it? Do people want the message of the conservative message of limited government? Or do they want somebody to give them a nice ideological justification for believing in our kind of statism, the statism that we like?
Yeah. Well, you touch a sore point with me, because I have lived my whole life making the bet that small audiences, small but dedicated, devoted audiences do matter. It's the bet that Bill Buckley made, not to compare myself to Bill, but it's the bet that Bill Buckley made. National Review never had a circulation of much more than 150,000 at its peak. I don't know what the circulation is now, but Bill's bet was that a small circulation magazine could nevertheless, if it was the right people reading it, it was a point of departure for getting ideas talked about in the rest of the country. His show Firing Line was not a network show. It was a PBS show. It never had a gigantic viewership, and yet it remained influential. So who knows? Who knows? There are days when you work at a think tank, as I do, you feel as though you're just putting one message after another into one bottle after another and pitching them overboard and hoping that somebody finds them. The feedback is not immediate many days, but that's, I don't know, not to stray into too much of pomposity, but that's sort of the bet that America's founded on, that somehow or other democracy will work, because at any given time, it's sort of, you can't fool all the people all the time, as Lincoln put it. At any given time, there will be enough people who are interested in sustaining and grasping American history, the principles of the founding. There will be enough to hold it all together. So that actually is an act of faith, and I'm making it.
Good. It's whether or not it can be characterized as, sort of the Irish saving civilization by copying the ancient text in their monasteries while the world went to barbarism, or the Isaac Asimov Nightfall model where the scientists get together and as the world goes dark and up in flames. I'd like to think that it's not going to be that there will be a time when these ideas seem pertinent and important, because the ones that have been operating for the last 20, 30, 40 years, the principles of statism, and I don't want to say globalism because that's stupid, but
right. Who even knows what that means?
Well, it depends on who you're talking to. For some people, it means trade that enriches the Better Business Bureau people. For others, it means this sort of Davos, to use another buzzword, idea of an intellectual transnational class that knows better than the rest of us and is happy, completely happy to dissolve national identity into this stew, this farrago of wonderful multiculturalism that they themselves never have to live amongst. That's the globalist thing to me, the European project and the Obama idea that would wrap the West into that. It's very Star Trekian, and it all depends on human nature being rewritten and recoded somehow. It's not going to happen. But at some point, when it comes down to the basic American ideals of citizenship, of belief in a common civic identity as opposed to a racial and ethnic identity, you hope that that there will be a moment when we realize how precious that is and how rare that is in human history and how lucky we are to have it. But it's like we have to get through 20, 30 years of the generation coming out of college to shudder their way through the system until they've completely wrecked it. And we're bifurcated into this world where the plutocrats of San Francisco live well and everybody else is paying $5 million to live in a small little house with hobos outside. So who knows? I don't know. But I am hopeful because I have to be, because what's the alternative? The alternative is simply to turn your back and to tend to your garden and the world goes to hell, and there's no great grim satisfaction in that. But there is great grim satisfaction in knowing that the podcast is over and that I can shut up. And you unfortunately won't hear Peter's charming laugh anymore. Hey, Peter, you know who brought this podcast to you?
I think you're going to tell me.
It would be the Great Courses. It would be Casper. It would be Away Travel. And, Peter, what should people do now that they have finished listening to the podcast?
They should go to ricochet.com and join up.
Why, it's only $2.50 a month, I hear.
$2.50 a month to listen to the podcast with a totally clean conscience.
Right.
That is a deal.
And how many podcasts that are out there can you say, oh, and that guy that we were listening to a little while ago, he's a member of the Trump administration right now. We didn't get around to talking about Larry, but that's probably because Larry will get around to talking about Larry in his own venues, and we wish him well. We wish you to go to iTunes and give us a couple of nice reviews. That'll be great. Visit our sponsors, and thanks for listening. Peter, we'll see everybody in the comments at Ricochet 3.0.
next week, James. And in the meantime, I happen to know that the Blue Yeti, within seconds of the news that Larry Kudlow was joining the White House, sent Larry a note saying, "You owe us the first interview, buddy." We'll see how much pull he has. Take care, James.
Bye-bye.